Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to get on into our first Duet Night Abyss tier list. And instead of focusing on characters for now, we're instead going to be tackling a pretty important subject area, I think, for a lot of players as they're this early on in their progression within the game, and that is weapons. And I think weapons are a really important topic for us to get on into for a very simple reason. You want to build a lot of weapons to progress things like your trial rank in the game. You can see over here that they're a big source of the levels that you need to essentially unlock all of the stages, unlock all of the different features that are available, unlock characters, even more weapons, so on and so forth. So it's really important to build a good number of them. But people are likely wondering, across all of the weapons that are in the game, what are some of the best ones to build first? What are some of the ones that are going to give you the most bang for your buck early on, be usable on a bunch of different units, and of course, actually deliver a lot of value to your account? And that's what we're going to be doing today. And so we've got all the weapons ready to go. Time for us to do a bit of a breakdown. When it comes to the different categories of how we're going to be ranking them, I think a whole like S, A, B, C, D sort of ranking isn't really that helpful or that beneficial. I'll just go ahead and put as high priority or like must build. Then we'll have high priority over here for the orange category. And then this one is going to be lower. This one is going to be something along the lines of specialized or niche use cases. I'll just put niche over here because Tier Maker doesn't seem to be very happy with me about this one. And then we're going to have build just for trial rank. You're basically just building that for EXP. And then the D tier down here, we're going to have a bit of a unique category, TBD. And these are going to be weapons that actually have some very unique effects that might actually have a lot more potential as time goes on within the game. This will be my list of weapons that I believe haven't really been fully explored yet because people simply need to have more trial rank, have more experience with the game to see their full potential. And you can consider these sort of like the wild cards of the roster, and their placement might actually be a lot higher or potentially even a lot lower than what you might be thinking. Because one of the big things about Duet Night Abyss is that, at least at this phase in the game, weapons are primarily stat sticks. But there are a lot of very interesting ones that have some very powerful sort of effects, but I don't think that their full potential can actually be realized at this point in the game. One of the examples that I'll just show is this weapon, actually, where you see you got some massive crit damage buffs, and you have the ability, right, to increase its damage even more as you build up something like the combo level, which you can build up relatively fast in these endgame modes that you have. But, like I said before, weapons are primarily stat sticks. People haven't really invested in these with things like the demon wedges, so on and so forth, to really make them shine. So that's where some of the weapons are going to lie. Let's go ahead and get ourselves started with some of the first offerings that are going to be available. And the first weapon that we're going to be listing out over here is going to be Osteo Breaker. So I'm just going to go ahead, pop on over into the menu over here, and we'll just see what this weapon actually does. So Osteo Breaker has a pretty unique effect. It has a skill duration buff of about 18%. And I'll be considering all of the weapons that have these things called, that have like just these baseline stat buffs as ones that are relatively high priority. And the reason for that is quite simple. These buffs are really, really, really good for certain characters on the roster. Skill duration is an example of a buff that can really help with efficiency, managing your sanity, and actually being able to, for certain characters like a Lin or a Psyche, be able to use their ultimate for a very, very, very long time. However, that does have the drawback of not really being that useful on other characters who don't rely on things like skill duration. For example, on a character like Lin, her ultimate is something that is considered one of her main damage, like one of the main ways that she deals damage. And skill duration over here basically allows her to reduce the overall sanity cost that some of her abilities are going to have, and then also helps increase the duration of some of her big damage buffs. So that's one of the big reasons and why I'm rating it so highly, because it's actually a very, very desirable stat for a lot of characters on the roster. So with that in mind, like I said before, we're going to be rating Osteo Breaker probably in the high priority for now, because I think that there are some weapons that also provide skill duration that actually have some better overall boosts to a character's potential damage. But for now, again, this one's going to be in high priority just because of its good overall skill buff, but it doesn't really have anything that makes it stand out over other weapons that have a similar sort of buff. That's where it's going to go for now. The next weapon that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be available in the Nocturnal Echoes commission. And I do believe it's actually available from the Psyche boss over here. Let's take a look at it. Exiled Thunderworm. So what this weapon does is it gives you a trigger probability of 75%, which is only good for specific types of characters that have like some random, not really random, but have like some interactions with actually applying weapon debuffs. Trigger probability is essentially on your weapon, your ability to apply a certain debuff that each weapon type actually has. And this one has the bonus effect of being a beam attack that ricochets off the target and hits up to 4 nearby enemies within range. And then this is where I'm talking about some of the bonus effects that weapons have. When an electro character triggers bonus effects with this weapon, they gain 45% skill damage for 10 seconds. That's kind of fucking good. And so, as a result of that, this is either going to go into high priority or in the must build. And the reasons why I'm not going to put it in must build right off the bat is the fact that electro characters kind of suck in this game. Yeah, the only electro characters that we really have access to right now are going to be Sybil and Randy, as well as Rhythm. And, well, the reality is you're not going to be using electro characters in any of the endgame for a very, very, very long time. And for now, I can't put it in the must-build category because when you look at the real, strenuous content in the game, which is going to be immersive theater, you only really want to use Pyro and Animo characters in this game mode because you'll have big resistances that you need to overcome if you're not using those units. And so because of that, I'm not going to go ahead and rank an Electro-specific weapon relatively high, but you'll see from that effect, 45% skill damage is insane. And then adding that on top of a baseline 75% trigger probability is also kind of insane too. From a perspective of like a weapon that's giving as many buffs as possible, it is really, really, really close to the top just in terms of how overloaded stat-wise a weapon can actually be. And so once Electro is a little bit more viable, once there are more characters that are Electro as well that are going to be released in the future, because there are some very exciting ones coming up, I think that this one's going to bump up way higher. But we're just going to do an overall, recognition of the strength that it actually provides. So that's where it's going to go for now. Next up, I'm not exactly sure if this one's even in the game yet, so I think we'll put this one at the bottom for now. We're going to move on to this bad boy. And this one's going to take a little bit of a minute to actually look for it, because I do believe it is in Nocturnal Echoes. Yeah, I don't think it's something that you can actually grind for in the Secret Letter store. So let's take a look at Daybreak Hymn. So this one gives you multi-shot of 37.5%. And multi-shot is essentially a buff in the game that multiplies the number of projectiles that you're actually shooting at the enemies. Getting a high amount of multi-shot is actually really, really good for your overall damage. And so when dealing damage with this weapon, the lower the remaining ammo percentage, the higher the maximum damage dealt, up to an increase of 45%. And then that's when the ammo count is actually below 20%. This is a weapon that I'm going to put into the TBD sort of category. And the reason for that is kind of simple. I think that its passive buff actually has a lot of potential because this multi-shot stat that you have over here will actually apply to your character. Yes, sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. You might think that this multi-shot thing is only going to apply to the unit. I do believe that this is one that can actually transfer over to a character if they actually do have weapons, or really consonance weapons, that are able to actually benefit from multi-shot. Maybe I'm incorrect about that one, but I just haven't had the time to actually farm this one yet. And if that is the case, then this could be one of like the best supplementary range weapons that a person can have, because a character like Psyche or a character like Lyn, they have consonance weapons that are ranged weapons. And the thing that I'm thinking about is whether or not that multi-shot from the actual equipped weapon will apply to things like Hansel and Gretel, or, naturally, right, Psyche's consonance weapon over here, which is Icarus. And if that's the case, that would actually be absolutely insane. It would be a great way to improve their overall damage. But if it doesn't apply, then this weapon definitely falls under TBD because it's meant to be entirely, right, like a DPS-oriented weapon. And the unfortunate part is, ladies and gentlemen, DPS-based weapons, and those that don't just support the stats of the character, don't seem to be doing that well at this moment in time. But as people build out the demon wedges, do all of that investment that we just talked about, maybe it'll grow a lot more in the long run. But that's just something to think about. It might be something, again, that really makes a lot of sense, or it could just be something that has a lot of missed potential. Now, let's move on and take a look at this bad boy over here. And this weapon is going to be also available, I believe, from Nocturnal Commissions. Let's go take a look at it. The Submerged Serenade. This weapon is going to give you a crit damage buff of 62.5%, which is actually pretty damn powerful. And then also, projectiles that hit the environment or travel a certain distance will return to the user's position and then increase your ammo count. And for each additional ammo count gained, the weapon ends up dealing more damage. And so you're probably going to recognize where this one's going to go. It provides a pretty powerful stat bonus, but its additional effect is literally just improving the overall damage of the weapon. And because weapons are mainly stat sticks right now, I'm going to put this one in the TBD category. You're going to notice that a lot of weapons are going to go into here because I don't really think that I'm doing a lot of justice to weapons by just rating them as like niche or build for TR when we don't really know what their potential is. So that's where this one is going to go. And a lot of like the damage-oriented weapons are going to go down here as well. Next up, we're going to get a free-to-play weapon that or really not like necessarily free-to-play, but a free weapon that everybody gets. And that one is going to be, just go over here to rage weapons. We all get a copy of this. We can actually get 2 copies of this very easily. This one's going to be Flamme d'Epuration. And this weapon is a little bit interesting. It provides a trigger probability increase, much like the Exile Thunderworm that we saw before. And when it triggers a bonus effect, there's a 36% chance to reload 1 projectile. This thing is pretty good if you have a character that actually has trigger probability built into their kit and they actually gain benefit out of it. However, I do look at Exile Thunderworm in comparison, and I don't really think it's as good. I think that this falls comfortably under the niche category in terms of like what it can actually provide to teams. This thing is actually at like 75% trigger probability. You see 90% over here. I smelted a copy of it because you get 2 for free. And I think that this one is a little bit more damage oriented, but it also requires you to have trigger probability built into your kit for it to have any real use cases at all. I6 Lady Niffle is an example of a character with trigger probability that can actually benefit a lot from this one. But if you're not I6 Niffle, then I think that you kind of will have like some issues, right? You can see over here, when dealing damage using a ranged weapon, there's a 25% chance to summon either a Lunar Hunt or a Solar Eclipse once every second. You can kind of see what's going on over here. You want something like this in the character's kit for it to be really widely usable. And so because of that, I can pretty comfortably put this weapon in like the niche category, because I do think that there are just some outright better ones, right? That have like some better effects later on. And we'll make sure to take a look at those when they come up. Moving on now, we've got a shotgun. And this one is also one that you have a choice of getting for free. It depends on what you actually choose at the beginning of the game. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. This weapon over here is going to be Scream Shot. And this one has a very similar effect to the Osteo Breaker that we just looked at before. This one's going to buff skill duration again, and you can see I actually got a dupe of it as well, and that's why the skill duration's at 21.6%. Just based off the fact that skill duration is also like a strong buff, it's going to go into high priority. But do keep in mind that the value of other weapons that provide a similar stat isn't really as high, because both of these give skill duration. And so if you're actually planning on having like a practical use case in combat for either of these, well, you only really need one of them, especially if the weapon's serving as a stat stick. So do keep that in mind. It's kind of like high priority until you build one of these weapons that gives the stat, and then the other weapons kind of fall into like the build for TR following it afterwards, once you've already unlocked that baseline capability. So that's just something to keep in mind for weapons that have like identical effects. Because you see the skill duration buff over here on Scream Shot, then you go over and you look in the shop, and then you look at like Osteo Breaker, and then you'll be like, oh wait, this thing gives the same exact buff as that weapon that we already have on our account. Not too much of a priority to build this one then. It's mainly a TR thing at that point. Now let's go ahead and move on and take a look at this. I do believe that's either like a shotgun or something else. Let's get the actual name of it. It's going to be a little bit difficult to remember the names, but one thing that I do know is that this is from the Nocturnal Echoes and not from the actual store. It's going to be Day of Sacred Verdict. And this weapon is going to have another damage-oriented effect. Crit damage plus 62.5%, and fired projectiles track the crosshair. And when dealing damage with this weapon, the farther the target, the higher the damage, up to a maximum increase of 45%. Like I said before, when it comes to these more DPS-oriented weapons, they're kind of useless at this point, but they might have a very, very high use case in the future. So we're just going to leave that one there for now. Don't make it a huge priority to actually like focus up and try to implement it into builds, but it could turn out that these will have a lot more use cases in the future. Next weapon, we've got Blast Artistry. And as you can probably see over here, this one's similar. However, it has the unique effect of a character attack plus 50%. Charging is going to fire a special bullet that travels slowly and explodes after a short delay, dealing AoE damage. And tap firing bullets can trigger its early detonation on impact. And when an Umbro character casts their ultimate, they're going to grant 20% skill efficiency for 15 seconds. You can probably see what's going on over here. I'm going to rate this one as pretty high priority. And the reason for that is kind of simple. It's one of those dual-purpose weapons that gives you a really, really respectable stat buff of 50%, and then it also gives an amazing stat buff of 20% skill efficiency if you're an Umbro character. This is really, really, really good for Berenica. It's also really, really, really good for Fantasio. And so if you do plan on building those characters, at least at some point in the future, this is something that you're going to want to have equipped in their ranged weapon slot to make them feel really, really, really good. Much like how for Electro characters, like we covered before, you probably want Exiled Thunderworm, because that 45% skill damage is also really, really, really good, but it is element specific. So you're going to notice a lot of these element specific weapons are going to go up into here. And the reality of it is they're actually pretty damn strong. Next up, we got this plant thing. It's a little bit weird. The weapon effect is also very, very, very interesting. Silent Sour. And this thing is going to have a crit chance increase of 50% to your character. And the projectile it shoots attaches to the target and explodes after 3 seconds. And projectiles attached to one another in the same position will stack up, increasing the damage of the incoming explosion. And when 1, 2, 3 projectiles are stacked, it deals that amount of according damage. So you can see, actually looks really, really, really strong. However, we do have the same situation that we had before when it comes to DPS weapons. It's dog shit when you try to use it right now, but I think it has a lot of potential for the future. And while its stat buffs are pretty decent overall, there are simply weapons that have more crit chance than this, right? There are weapons that give more crit chance than this. And so because of that, if you're not actually actively using it for its damaging effect, you're just using a subpar version of something else that gives crit rate. Because I'm pretty sure there are plenty of other options, plenty of other weapons that do give that stat, and we will see them as we go further down the list. And now we got Rend Husk. And this is going to be an example of one of those weapons that just has higher stats. It's also going to be available from the Secret Letter store. And this bad boy just gives you a character attack plus 60%. So one of the things that we talked about before was that one of those other weapons had 50% attack, but then gave a special buff to Umbro characters, right? That was Blast Artistry. This one just gives 60% attack to your character. And that alone, being like that big of a stat buff, it's going to be something that I'm going to recommend. I'm actually going to put it into the must-build category, because there's only a couple of weapons that actually give a stat buff this big. One of the other weapons that gives a stat buff like this is actually a melee weapon, Blade Amberglow. And this is what you get at the start of the game. And so, if you're using weapons as just primarily stat sticks, right, you can just equip this bad boy for 60% attack, and then equip this bad boy in the other slot for 60% more attack. And so that's going to be 120% attack on your character just from the weapons that they have equipped. And you never actually have to use them in combat to benefit from it. So that's something that can be really cool as well. And so just because it's the highest stat buff in the game that you can get from your ranged weapon for attack, we're just going to put it into the must build category for now, because there are plenty of ways you can use this across your entire roster. Now we're going to have a Nocturnal Echoes weapon, Sacrosanct Decree. And what this weapon is going to do is it's going to provide multi-shot of 37.5%, and when this weapon triggers a bonus effect on hit, it's going to increase your melee weapon damage by 35%. Yeah, I'm just going to say this up front. This looks like one of the most pointless things I've ever seen in the game, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but the way that melee weapons and gunplay works is a little bit awkward. You'll build up combo counter right? Doing your melee attacks, and then using a ranged weapon deletes your combo counter. It's kind of unintuitive. And so, like, this idea that there's going to be a weapon over here, right, where you're, like, mixing shooting with, like, attacks, it seems a little bit off. And the fact that the buff only lasts for, like, 12, like, looky over here, right? I'll build up my melee combo counter. You see over here, we have 16. I'll shoot my weapon and it immediately disappears. And so, I guess I'll get 12 seconds when using it to, like, I don't know, deal some damage. But then I'm going to have to make sure to, like, consume my combo counter before shooting, and maybe it'll actually lead to, like, some good gameplay. So, I think for now, I'll put it into niche. Yeah, for now, I'll put it into niche. Don't want to get too doom posty about weapons this early on in release, but hopefully you're beginning to see how some of the systems that are already in the game might work against the potential viability of this bad boy. So that's just something to keep in mind over here. Now let's move on and take a look at another weapon that's going to be available in the shop, Entropic Singularity. And this one's kind of unique. This is going to give a trigger probability of 75%, and each shot with this weapon has a chance to fire an extra projectile at no ammo cost that deals AoE damage equal to 50% of its attack. So this one over here is a little bit interesting. I think it fits pretty comfortably in line as like a potential DPS option in the future, as you know, more and more builds start getting released. Overall, I would say it's definitely comfortably in that TBD category that we just talked about over here. So we won't dive too much into it for now. You can clearly see it's meant to be like a weapon that pumps out a shit ton of DPS, but like we've already established before, weapons don't really deal that much damage in this game. Now we're gonna have the dual pistols, and these bad boys are crazy. X-Res Duo. And this effect is going to be skill damage plus 24%. You can probably imagine where this one's going to go. Yes, it's going to go into the must build, because I do believe that this is one of the only sources of skill damage in the game in the ranged weapon slot. And you do kind of end up unlocking it kind of late in your playthrough. You got to be a pretty high trial rank for this bad boy. Like I said, skill damage is really important for making your characters deal a lot of damage with their abilities. And character abilities are kind of the only viable thing in the game at the moment. So having X-Res Duo ready to go to buff the character's damage across your account, because you can equip this on every single character, it's just really, really, really good. I would dare say it even goes above Rendhusk, which is the weapon that gives attack, in terms of whether or not you should really build it. This thing is absolutely cracked, and I recommend that every single person gets a copy of it. Now, let's move on and take a look at Sacrosanct Decree, and that's like the dual version of this weapon. It's going to have an entirely different effect, though. So it's going to be unlocked from the Sybil boss fight, and this bad boy is going to give you 50% crit chance, and dealing crit damage with this weapon grants 6.2% multi-shot for 12 seconds, up to 10 sacks. So up to 62% multi-shot alongside crit chance. I would dare say that this is going to be one of the strongest sets of, like, DPS weapons that exists in the game. But unfortunately, and this one's going to be on my watch list for, like, seeing the value increase in the future, I think that this could be one of the top ranked weapons as time goes on. But unfortunately, when everyone is under, you know, the kind of like spell that weapons don't really deal that much damage, I can't really push this one too much at this point. But again, keep this one on the watch list for the future. I think it's something that's going to have a lot of potential as time goes on. Now we're going to have an actual set of must-build pistols over here. I'm just going to preemptively put them at S. And this one is going to be available from the shop, and it's going to be none other than Blue Current Pulse. These things are really good. While you might consider them to be a little bit niche, they are still just one of the strongest overall pistols in the game. They give a skill duration buff of 15%, which is at a baseline very, very, very comparable to other weapons that give 18% skill duration. And it also has a bonus effect where when projectiles hit enemies or the environment, they bounce and will start hitting other enemies, so they actually have a decent amount of AoE. And then, when dealing damage with this weapon, it increases all dual pistols damage by 45% for 15 seconds. So this thing is really good on Lynn, because she's able to stack up the buff, that 45% damage buff, and then also, she's able to take that damage buff and then apply it to her consonance weapons that she's using when she's in her ultimate. So yeah, she takes that damage buff, applies them to these, And then you also got the additional skill duration too, which we've already mentioned before is really good for her kit. And overall, just with these weapons having the skill duration stat, they're kind of just usable on a lot of characters at a baseline. And I would recommend them as if you don't have the duo pistols ready to go, they're kind of like a good alternative as just like ranged weapons to use on everybody, because skill duration is something that I would say like 90% of characters are able to benefit from at a baseline. And with their balancing effect, I know weapons don't deal that much damage, but sometimes you do end up using them, and they do kind of perform in AoE, and it's not really that bad. So yeah, I'm gonna rate these relatively high because of that, and there's a good reason for them to be at the top if you ever, especially when you consider how underperforming some other options can actually be. Now, we've got one of the most interesting weapons in the game, and this one is unfortunately only going to be available from Nocturnal Echoes, and that's going to be Embla in Florence. And what this thing does is it gives you a massive skill range buff of 30%, and while charging, the weapon gradually locks onto enemies, and upon release, fires tracking arrows at all locked targets. And when a Lumino character deals skill damage, grant 35% skill damage for 6 seconds. You can probably see where this one is going to go. It has a massive baseline stat bonus, and then gives an even more massive skill damage bonus as well. It's going into high priority, or potentially must build, depending on whether or not you have like Lady Niffle and you really want to grind her. But this is something that you should end up building relatively soon, because this buff just at a baseline for Lumino characters is fucking insane. And all you need to do to trigger it is deal skill damage, and then you get more skill damage. You can use this on any Lumino character, frankly, if I'm going to be honest. And I might just build this in advance for Fina, who's coming out in the future. Maybe she'll have a better weapon to use, but this one is already looking pretty damn fucking good. So, yeah, this one is just absolutely cracked. The stat bonuses are amazing. This stuff works when you're not even using the weapon. It's extremely strong. Extremely strong. Could also possibly be in the must-build category because of that. Now, we're going to have the more supportive weapon. And this one is something that doesn't really matter too much as a must-build, but we'll talk about it anyways. You get this one for free. You get Arc Light Apocalypses for free for being at trial rank 45. And this one gives you a nice skill duration buff of 15%. And then when you land a crit with this weapon, you'll randomly grant other allies one of the following buffs for 16 seconds. Attack, defense, skill damage, or skill duration. You want this to be on your support character that you're running into all the content with permanently. It just provides free buffs to your team. You get it for free, just level it up. Yeah, it's just, you want this on your Daphne, you want this on your Truffle, you want this on your Margie, you want this on anybody who's just in like the second or third team slot giving buffs to your team. You'll just have them give even more buffs. It's great. And honestly, maybe even getting copies of it would be great too, because you would only further increase how many buffs you're getting to the team, and you're also increasing the duration of the buffs too. This is just a solid weapon overall. Very, very, very strong. No reason not to have it in your lineup because of, well, it's a great support weapon. Now let's move on, and let's take a look at this bad boy. I don't think this one is that good, but we'll talk about it. It's only available once you hit a whopping 62 trial rank. This is going to take a long time to unlock. And then once you unlock it, all it gives is 36% skill range. I'm going to be real over here. I would much rather prefer losing 6% skill range to get all of like the crazy uniqueness that you end up getting from this bow, right? Because we just talked about it. Embla and Florence. It only gives 6% more skill range than this, and then doesn't have any of these effects. I'm going to be real with you over here. I'd rather just build Embla, lose a little bit of skill range, but then get the unique lock-on mechanic, and then also get the buff to Lumino characters. I don't really think that this bow that just gives 6% more is anything that crazy. I'll put it under build for TR. But if you really want the stats, you really need that extra 6% skill range, maybe it's a must build for you, and it's something that makes or breaks the difference in your build. But I would say for most players, yeah, I don't really see why somebody would want this over the other bow options in the game. However, it's also fair to say that there's not a lot of skill range increasing weapons in the game. So it might just be higher value as a result of that. So maybe we'll put it under niche, but I think build for TR is a safe place for it for now. Now we've got another weapon, and this one it's a little bit interesting. Searing Sand Whisper. And this one is going to be attack speed plus 25%, and each enemy struck by a single arrow increases the arrow's damage by 9%, with a maximum increase of 45. You can probably guess where this one's going to go. right over here into this category of TBD, because it's clearly a DPS-oriented weapon, but we haven't really gotten a lot of users of DPS-oriented weapons yet. Silverwing Edict is also going to fall under the same exact category, because it's kind of almost the same thing. When this weapon triggers a bonus effect on hit, attack speed plus 25%, grant even more attack speed for 12 seconds, up to 10 stacks. And the effect is removed when switching weapons. So this one is, again, meant to be like an entirely DPS-oriented offering. But when people aren't getting that great of a result with these, I can't really give that great of a judgment, because in all honesty, these are trash, but they should be better in the future. Now, let's take a look at this. I do believe that is a grenade launcher. Destructo. This one gives a skill range of 36%. And so, like we've just talked about before, right? This one's going to be a lot more easily available than Soul Rend, which was that weapon that also gave 36% skill range. This is simply an option that's available earlier. You know, being entirely real over here, I still think that the bow is better. The bow is just going to be better because it has all those additional effects. But at least this one also isn't like a bow too, right? At least this one's like a grenade launcher. So there's a little bit more variety over here. I think I'll just rank it a little bit higher because of that. We'll put it into high priority. But do keep in mind that this bow only gives you 6% less, and it has way more interesting effects. So maybe this one also goes under build for trial rank. You should be prioritizing this bow over any of these other options. That's just going to be my professional take in regards to this. Now, let's move on and take a look at this saw thing. Nocturnal Echoes, and here we go. Kui Zhu Ratchet. That sounds like a slur. That sounds like a slur. Crit damage plus 62.5%. When its projectiles hit enemies or the environment, they split into 2 additional projectiles that continue to travel. After switching to this weapon, increase multi-shot by 38%, which decreases over time. This weapon can only be triggered once every 10 seconds and is removed when switching to another weapon. So yes, this is going to be another DPS-oriented lineup over here. I believe that this weapon has an incredible amount of AoE. It kind of just shoots like saw blades everywhere. There's actually weapons in Warframe that are kind of similar to how this one functions. But when weapons deal no damage, you can't really get the full benefits out of whatever all this good stuff is. So once again, it's going to fall into the TBD category. A lot of these damage-oriented weapons are all going to fall there. I think we've already explained that enough. No real need to explain that one much further. The next weapon that we're going to be taking a look at is Stellar Finality. And this one gives explosion range plus 0.2%. One of the most unique stats we've seen. And when its projectiles explode, they split into 6 additional projectiles that explode and deal damage. And when defeating a target with this weapon, grant 1 stack that increases crit damage by 8.8%, up to 10 stacks. 88% crit damage. You can probably guess where this one's going to go, right? You can probably guess where this one is going to go. Into the TBD category. Because once again, a lot of very, very unique weapon options in this game. We're just waiting for people to like cook up the good combinations that are actually getting benefit. Unfortunately, though, I can't really recommend any player, especially with this being the way to unlock them. You only get 5 of these challenges a week. I'd rather prefer that the average player just goes for options that are going to be a lot more consistent rather than spending their weekly claims on a weapon that doesn't have any verified use cases yet. So this is another just wait and see. A lot of the weapons that are in Nocturnal Echoes are also going to be in the wait and see category just for that reason. Next up, we're going to have Blade Amberglow. This one is going to be, well, in the must build, but you get this weapon just from starting the game. Yeah, everyone gets a copy of Blade Amberglow from just playing the game. It's after the first mission you unlock it. And this just gives a character attack of plus 60%. It's good. I use it on a bunch of characters all the time that just benefit from raw attack. Daphne is an example of one of them that I put in. And it works out relatively well. It improves the healing that she does. And I'm a very happy sailor as a result of it. So, yeah, I think a lot of people get a lot of use out of this one. I don't think there's anything too crazy about it. Moving on now. We've got Wilted Rose. Sorry, was that Wilted Rose or was that... It's Wandering Rose, not Wilted Rose. My bad. Attack speed plus 25%. And when performing a charge attack with this weapon, there is a 28% chance to reduce your resident support cooldown by 3 seconds. This one, like, might be okay. So basically, your resident support is when you, like, summon this guy. You see it over here, the Z hotkey. And you can clearly see it goes on a pretty long cooldown after you use it. It's about 30 seconds. So that effect is effectively going to increase the uptime of this ability. But the thing is that I don't really think it's that great of an effect, especially when the only other thing it provides is like... Sorry, I was in the wrong menu. The only other thing it provides is like 25% attack. Some people might actually be able to benefit from the attack speed buff, maybe like a Lin or a Psyche, and this could actually be really good. But then you would have to end up spamming charge attacks with the weapon. And that's probably not going to be very good overall for your DPS. However, I am going to recognize that this has a lot of use cases in the overworld where maybe the damage that you're dealing with your weapon doesn't matter as much. So I think it's fair to put this under niche because, hey, Boxy, right, is the guy that I just used. And this guy locates chests, and then he also locates other GD mods. And so you might be that you run Boxy, and you run this weapon, and then you're just spamming charge attacks in the overworld to, you know, get it back, right? And then you just spam Boxy and you just find all the genie mods and you find all the chests. So that could be a viable way to actually get some value out of Wandering Rose. However, is it worth spending your Nocturnal Commission's Echoes to do this? Save a couple of seconds every time you use Boxy. I don't really know. Maybe. It could be something that you actually get a lot of returns from. But once again, I don't really know if it's worth the weekly resets or the weekly runs to just see how nice a 3-second savings actually is. So, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Now, we're going to have Reminot Reminiscence. That's this bad boy. Yeah, Reminot. Okay, I did pronounce it correctly. What this weapon does is it has a higher attack range. And landing a crit with this weapon has a 33% chance to restore 3 sanity. And that can trigger every 0.5 seconds. I think that the unfortunate thing is that this weapon can be both good and bad. I think that this weapon is a little bit closer to like a support thing. You don't really want to use it that often on your actual DPS. And the unfortunate part is that you can't really control when your support characters are attacking or not attacking. And the end result is that this weapon could have a lot of potential use cases, but I feel like it's oftentimes just better to have the stat sticks that are available elsewhere, right? Things like skill damage, things like skill range, things like skill duration. And the end result is that it feels a little bit inconsistent. I think that's the main thing. It feels like a little bit inconsistent. And then even if you're on like Berenica, right? Who's a character that feels like it might be able to benefit a lot from it. Is it not just better to do like something that has skill damage instead so that she just kills faster and doesn't need to regenerate sanity? That's kind of like the reality of the situation, right? Is it just better to deal more damage so that you don't need to regenerate sanity because the enemies are all already dead and you're moving on to the next wave and then you're getting your sanity from the pickups instead? I don't really know. This one definitely has its use cases when it comes to boss fights because you don't get sanity drops in the middle of the fight when you're fighting bosses. And so it turns out that maybe that's where a lot more of the use cases are. But I think just in general combat, not really like the best thing ever, and you'll oftentimes miss the passive stat bonuses that you might get from something like Wayne Wraith instead. Do take that one with a bit of grain of salt. I'm going to put it under niche for now. I'm not going to say that it's going to be something that like changes everything because I have it and I'm like not really actively using it right now because like I said, I put this on my Daphne and then my other character is using this one that gives buffs. So I'm not getting a huge amount out of Reminot in my teams at the very least. Now, let's move on and take a look at this bad boy. We've got a Pyro Sword. And I do believe that one's going to be not here. It's going to be in Nocturnal Commissions. Yeah, I got it confused with Pyro Thirst over there. What this weapon is, it's called the Shackle of Lone Wolf. And this one gives you 75%. It looks like it's a fire weapon, but it's not. It's going to give you 75% trigger probability. And when a Hydro character triggers a bonus effect with this weapon, other allies gain 33% attack for 6 seconds. So this is kind of the unfortunate situation. There's not really a lot of other Hydro characters in the game that can like utilize this, but if somebody is utilizing this, you're getting some pretty damn good bonuses. And I think one character that you're able to combine this with is none other than, I think it's Tabitha. Yeah, there's a reason why her preferred weapon is a sword. So I don't have this character yet. She might be next on my unlock list because of all the buffs that she has. But she's essentially able to grant allies a 36%, it levels up with time. She gains a damage boost that she can, or a skill damage boost that she can provide to the entire team. And then while you're using the sword, right, that shackle thing that we just talked about, well, you're also going to be able to provide a nice amount of additional attack too. So it does give her a lot of supportive capabilities. You get skill damage bonuses to the entire team, and then you also get attack bonuses to the entire team as well. So it is a pretty loaded weapon from that regard. Do keep that in mind, but you kind of can only use it on, like, one character. You maybe will be able to use it on Rebecca, but you kind of want skill damage or skill duration or skill efficiency on her instead. So, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. You would actually have a Tabitha to support your Rebecca most of the time. I would rate this weapon, just based off of its, again, pretty prevalent use cases alone, I'll put it into high priority. I'll put it into high priority because I think that there's something really, really cool going on over there. And that's a lot of buffs too. The next weapon we'll be taking a look at over here is none other than Ingenious Tactics. Defense plus 50%. When dealing damage with this weapon triggers a bonus effect, there's a 25% chance to decrease the target shield by 350% of the user's defense. This is only usable on one character in the game because there's only one defense scaling sword user in the game, and that is going to be none other than fucking Randy. The unfortunate part is that Randy kind of doesn't do much except reduce shields, and that makes his shield reduction ability even better. However, this guy is just kind of like not that great until you have his I6, because his I6 does make him really nuts, but then you have to grind out his I6 because the guy kind of just doesn't really do anything other than shield and then also reduce the boss's stagger bar. And if that's what you're looking for, hey, yo, maybe he's actually cracked, right? But it's just, what else can I do with this weapon other than put it under niche? I think it's the definition of niche. So yeah, get it if you're gonna level up and use Randy, but if you don't plan on actually maining Randy, getting him to I6 and doing all this other stuff, I don't really see the reason why you would ever even build this thing. So yeah, this is the perfect example of a niche weapon. I don't think we need to talk too much about it over there. Now let's take a look. We got Sacred Favor. Character attack plus 50%. And charge attacks with this weapon grant 75% critical damage for 6 seconds. Effect is removed when switching weapons. So this one over here is really similar to Amberglow, but then it also has some of the damage bonuses. It also has some big crit damage bonuses too. I think that there's a good amount of potential for this weapon to actually have some good use cases, because even though the effect is removed when switching weapons, maybe you're actually able to benefit with your character skills, right? Because you just cast your skills in the middle of like a combo, something along those lines. So I'll put this one under relatively high priority for now, because it does seem to be one of the more free weapons that you can use. And having just a general boost to attack is actually pretty solid. It's only 10% lower than Blade Amberglow, and then it has the potential to give you 75% critical damage. So I think that there's some work that you need to do to actually get this going, but it doesn't really have hard activation conditions or anything too crazy, so I am going to rate it relatively highly just because of that. Next weapon that we have is, I don't believe it's going to be in Nocturnal Commissions. It's going to be in your secret letters, and that is going to be Withershade. Skill range plus 36%. Just another weapon that gives skill range. Once again, it can be considered high priority, but if you're just going to go for like the bow, maybe not. But another thing to keep in mind is that this is also one of the only melee weapons with skill range. And so because of that, I might actually just bump it up. It's going to be another skill stat stick. But once again, it's a melee weapon that's giving you skill range. And there's really just not that many of those. So that's just something to keep in mind. Those passive bonuses can actually be pretty high overall. And 36% is a pretty damn big chunk. We put it up here because of the passive bonuses. Now let's take a look at this bad boy. Momiji Iteki. Hopefully I don't get canceled for that one. What this weapon is going to provide is a crit damage bonus of 62.5%. And then when dealing damage with this weapon, you're going to increase the damage dealt by 9% with additional 9% increase per combo level. You can probably guess where this one's going to be. Yes, it's going to be in the TBD category because I have personally tried to build this weapon. It actually seems really cool. Like, it's fun using it, but even on Outsider, I'm dealing no fucking damage. And that just might be like the end result of me not whittling them down with the ranged weapon first, but I have not been able to actually get a lot of use cases out of it. But you can already see over here, it looks like it has the potential to be really strong because your combo level goes from like, I think it's like D C, B, A, S. There's like 5 levels, so it can go up to like a 45% damage boost, I do believe. Maybe it goes up even higher to like 54%. But that's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn powerful. So hopefully there will be a way for it to be usable in the future. Next up, we're just going to put Outsiders weapons onto here because you get a copy of them for free. You get the Exiled Fangs for free. This gives you an attack speed boost, and when dealing damage with this weapon triggers a bonus effect, if the user's HP is below 25%, there's a 45% chance to restore 1.5% of the max HP. I actually think this passive effect is kind of almost useless. This is like supposed to be like Outsider's signature, but in practice, I feel like you just want a weapon that deals more damage instead. That would just be like the initial take from me. And again, maybe I'm entirely wrong about it, but I don't really feel like these weapons are even that good. They're actually a little bit disappointing, if I'm frankly being real. But you'll just want to build them anyways, because you get them for free. It is what it is. Now, let's move on and take a look at some other dual blades that are going to be available. And this set that I'm going to be showing you is only going to be available from Nocturnal Commissions. And that's going to be... How the fuck do you... Oriat Yore? Whatever the hell, however the hell you pronounce that. Crit damage plus 62.5%. A little bit different, right? Sliding attacks with this weapon gain 75% crit chance. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is going to be something. Maybe this is something that's like actually sick. The crit damage is nice, but I've noticed that sliding attacks kind of don't feel that good to use in this game. And so maybe there's like some crazy sliding attack builds that will come out in the future. But for now, I cannot comfortably say that I have seen sliding attacks do anything at this point in the game. So maybe this is something that's actually going to have some more use cases as time goes on. But yeah, I don't really see the vision over here with this one. Next dual blade that we're going to be taking a look at is none other than Fathomless Shark Gaze. These just give skill range. So once again, it's going to be another stat stick sort of weapon. It's pretty much same exact thing as Withering Shade over here. Like I mentioned before, once you unlock one of these, you're kind of like set. You'll probably get the Katana first, and then this one's going to go into build for TR. But in a similar way, it's kind of like whichever one you build first. You want one just for the capability, and then the other one that you make, at least right now, you're kind of just doing it for TR. So do keep that in mind. They're basically interchangeable because of that. This and Withering Shade, they basically have the same effect. So I think we're ready to move on with this one. Next up, we're going to have the Polearm that everyone gets at the start of the game. So it's going to go into must build. Let's just examine the effect, though, of it a little bit. So this bad boy is going to, A, increase your attack speed by 25%, and it's going to deal 45% more damage to targets that are afflicted with bonus effects. It's kind of like a DPS-oriented weapon. You get this one for free, though, so you should just level it up and ascend it to get the trial rank. But do keep in mind that if it wasn't given out for free, it'd probably be down here. Because once again, it's a weapon that's meant to deal damage, and weapons just don't really deal damage right now. But if you get one for free, just go ahead and build it. It's not really that big of a deal. Next up, we're going to have another weapon. But this one's going to be from the secret letter shop. And that's going to be Siren's Kiss. I do believe this is supposed to be Rebecca's signature. And what this weapon does is it gives you a massive skill range of 30%. And when performing normal attacks with this weapon, grant a 3.6% attack speed increase for 15 seconds, up to 12 stacks. Effect is removed when switching weapons. So Rebecca actually scales very, very, very well with attack speed. And she also scales very well with skill range. This is without a doubt a very strong weapon for her, because her jellyfishes will actually attack more often with the right demon wedge when she has more attack speed. And this gives you a lot of potential attack speed, so it's actually really good on her. You actually want to spam some of those melee weapons. So because of that, I'm going to put it under high priority, because Rebecca's a really, really good character, and you could put it under must build if she's somebody that you really want to get the most potential out of. But once again, because we're not in a Hydro-favored endgame mode, and Rebecca already does, like, fine without it, you can just run Wainwraith on her. We'll cover that one in a second. I'll just put it under high priority. It's probably something that you want to improve on in the future, and it will make your farming a good deal bit faster with the character. But next, we're going to have Wainwraith, and you get this one for free, and it's also really fucking good. Yeah, we've already looked at this one a bit, but this just gives 24% skill damage. One of the only weapons in the game that just gives a raw skill damage boost. And you can use this on not just polearm users. It's not just Rebecca. You can low-key use this on every single DPS character in the game. Because the viable ones do skill damage. And this just gives a big old chunk of it. Just level this up, get its trial rank as high as possible, and just use it on all the characters that deal skill damage. Your Lins, your Psyches, your all of that. But chances are you probably aren't going to be using it on Psyche because it's really easy to get Psyche's weapon. And so because this weapon, you get the secret letter clues, essentially, for free, because you just get them for the immersive theater, that one's also going to go under must build. And Psyche's weapon is naturally really, really good on Psyche. Elpides abound. And this one gives you a resolve of 5%, which increases your damage the lower HP you are, and Psyche essentially drains her HP permanently. And after an Anemo character uses their ultimate skill, grants the 1,000 Winds Blessing, which increases your resolve by an additional 8%, and then gives you 15% attack speed. And then every instance of skill or ranged weapon damage extends the duration. This is basically, you're able to absolutely shred with this thing. And you can actually get multiple copies of it really, really, really easily. It's also usable on Outsider too. And you also get Psyche for free for her secret letter clues just from clearing the immersive theater. You should have her and her weapon if you're progressing into the endgame. And when both of them are essentially free and they're a great combo together, I can't really put it anywhere else other than must build. I think that's a fair place for it. Now, let's take a look at some of the Greatsword options that are available in the game. Pyrothers. This is going to be a Greatsword that just gives you 18% skill duration. Nothing too crazy about this one. It's going to fall under here if you need another skill duration thing, but if you already have a skill duration weapon, it's going to go under build for TR. That's essentially what it is. You should have at least one weapon of each skill range, skill duration, skill whatever, skill damage, one of each of those types, and then additional copies that you make, they're going to go under build for TR. I think that's a pretty simple thing that we've done. It's pretty consistent overall. Now let's take a look at a Greatsword. And I do believe that you actually get this Greatsword for free just from playing the story. So it's going to go under must build, but we'll take a look at it. Crit chance plus 50% on Iron Forger. And when dealing damage with this weapon, triggers a bonus effect, there's a 2.1% chance to increase the combo level to maximum. I think this weapon is actually like really fucking bad, but you get it for free. Right? You get this weapon for free, but I don't really think it's that particularly good. It's primarily for Lin. Is it? You're not saying that this weapon is for Lin, right? You guys are talking about the other one. I don't even see how this benefits Lin in any fucking way. Yeah, okay, the other one. Okay, so yeah, this thing is just kind of dog shit. But maybe there's like 2.1 is so low. It's so low. I don't see how this does it. It's so low. 2.1%? Good God, it is a great sword. It doesn't even attack fast. Anyways, I just think it's kind of dog shit. But you get it for free, so why not level it up for the trial ring? Now let's go ahead and take a look at our last Greatsword, and this one's going to be a Punitive Inferno. Max HP plus 50%. When a Pyro character takes damage, grants 15% skill duration for 8 seconds up to 3 stacks. So, this is meant for one character in the game, but it can actually be used on a couple. There aren't a lot of weapons in the game that give HP. This is one of the only ones. However, you kind of only want to use this on, like, 2 characters. You can use this on Truffle and Filbert, because they scale off of HP. Probably not the best idea, though. And then you also use it on Hellfire, who's also a Pyro character that takes damage and then wants all of those stats. It's niche. It's really niche. I don't really know what else to say beyond that. Yeah, we'll just leave it there for that one. Next, we're gonna have some of the Swordwhips. Sword whip blade things. I think the first one up is actually going to be, okay, there's like the 3 of them look exactly the fucking same. I think it's found in Nocturnal Echoes, so let's take a look over here. I believe that first one is Viridis Reefs. And what this one does is it gives you trigger probability chance of 75%, and charge attacks with this weapon grant 44% attack speed for 6 seconds. I feel like this one's really bad. But maybe I'm gonna be happy to be proven wrong. But, like, legitimately, this one seems like one of the worst ones in the game. It doesn't seem to have any additional bonuses, and all it gives is more attack speed. I feel like this thing has to be garbage. Straight up. And I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I think it's so bad it doesn't even deserve to fall under TBD. I just think it's, like, legitimately bad. Attack speed, but then there's not really anything over here that seems to be doing much damage. Maybe it's good for Sybil, but I'm pretty sure there's another whip sword in here that's a little bit more tailored for Sybil. Let's take a look at that one. Undying Oneros. Max HP plus 50%. And when this weapon triggers a bonus effect, grant even more HP. Sybil is an HP scaler. This is Sybil's weapon. And I think that based off of the massive amount of HP it seems to be giving, I'll put it under niche. Because it might work actually on Hellfire over here too, because it doesn't seem to have any sort of like specific need to be a certain element character to activate its buffs. So yeah, it's just an HP stat stick. You can think of it as a bit of like a side grade to this over here, but it just gives raw HP. But there's not a lot of HP scalers in the game, so I'll just put it under niche for now. I think that's a fair spot for it. Now for the last whip sword that we're going to have. I do believe this one's in the store as well. And this one's just going to be Tether Lash. And this one just gives skill duration. So as we're beginning to see over here, that one is probably going to fall under build for TR. But this is essentially going to be our tier list from must build all the way to wait on it for now. It's to be determined how viable the weapons are. This is going to be the tier list. At the weapons of the top over here, just a bit of a summary for what's going on. These are going to be the weapons that end up providing the best overall, like, raw stat bonuses to the character. Because stat bonuses at a baseline are the most beneficial things that weapons can give you at this point in time. And naturally, that means that weapons that have, like, a little bit more damage-oriented effects, like the ones in the TBD category, aren't going to be valued as much. When we head into high priority, those are also going to be weapons that, you know, have like some different effects. I'll just pop these down here for now. These are weapons that are going to have some unique effects that are a little bit element reliant. For example, this one needs a Lumino character. This one needs Electro. This one needs Umbro. This one needs Hydro. So on and so forth. And they're great when they're on the character that they're used for. And they're even better than like the niche weapons, because those are like weapons that aren't necessarily at the same level as the ones that are in high priority, and they do have like some specific kit-based interactions, right? Things like Randy signature, you got Sybils, you got Hellfires, all of that stuff, Reminiscence, those are going to fall under niche. And then in build for TR, this is where you're going to have alternative versions of the weapons that we saw up here, where they might be like a different type, but they have the same overall sort of like skill bonuses. So you don't really need, I don't think you need multiple copies of like 36% skill range, or I don't think you need multiple copies of 20% skill duration. You only kind of need one because you can equip the weapons on all the different characters. So yeah, I think that's where this one is going to lie for now. And apparently, I can look in the armory, and somebody said I can look at some of the future weapons that are going to be in the game. This is going to be Finesse weapon. Skill range plus 30%. When a character that's Lumino deals bonus damage, there's a 30% chance to grant allies 9% attack for 15 seconds. That sounds pretty damn good to me. I'll put it under high priority. That'll be the last bit of coverage over there. But yeah, I think that has been the list as a whole of weapons and how you should prioritize them in this game. Hopefully the dialogue that we've had over here, right, about like duplicate effects, that sort of thing, wasn't too hard to handle. And when it comes to weapons down here, wait and see for people to experiment with them and see if there are actually builds that work. Because guess what, guys? It requires a lot of expenditure to get these weapons, and nobody's really been able to make them work yet. So I would suggest, if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of time or is really trying to conserve and be efficient with your resources, wait to grind out any of these. But thankfully, most of these are in the Nocturnal ecosystem. And when you're in the sort of like Nocturnal echoes to grind, I think you should be prioritizing the characters first and then going for the weapons afterwards. So that's a situation that kind of solves itself there too. But yeah, that's going to be our overall tier list for weapons in Duet Night Abyss. I know that this category over here is pretty damn big, but that's just kind of how the cookie's been crumbling across the end game when it comes to this game. That'll be that for this one. Let me know what you all thought, ladies and gentlemen, and peace out.